Hey everyone, I'm Critbuff and I'm here with a guide on the recent changes to the Titan subclasses that came with patch 2.1.4. I'll follow the list of changes that Bungie released with their patch notes, and I'm going to start off with bottom tree sunbreakers. There were also some changes to the Burning Maul super itself that I'll talk about. We'll then quickly get into the Sentinel Titan super changes before finally talking about the new and improved Striker Titan. Oh yeah baby, I am excited. Let's get started. First up, we have some big, and I mean big, quality of life improvements to bottom tree sunbreakers. Out of the gate, they've doubled the damage from sunspots from 25 to 50 per tick. This means enemies standing in your sunspots will take twice as much damage as they did before the patch. On our friend the Ogre here, the sunspots originally did 300 per hit before the patch, and now they're hitting for 748 per tick. The extra 148 damage per hit is coming from the next change to the bottom tree sunbreakers. The Sun Warrior perk now buffs all of your damage in PvP by 20% and 25% in PvE. On top of that, Bungie also buffed the perk's duration to 5 seconds, which is up from the original 3. Doing more damage is always a good thing, and these buffs were sorely needed to help make the code of the Siegebreaker more viable. But let's address the melting point shaped elephant in the room. Being able to hit a boss with your hammer strike to improve your fire team's damage will probably always be the best option for group activities. The big so what here with these changes is that you'll finally have a good alternative to the top tree for endgame content. This will be great for sunbreakers and groups that already have a top tree Night Stalker Hunter or someone with Tractor Cannon in their fire team. The only real problem here for this subclass is the buff to sunspots can feel wasted on enemies who move or teleport out of them. Bosses like the Gofanin Forge Servitor, who constantly move around, can avoid a lot of your damage through their mechanics. This means top tree with melting point and explosive hammers will still sometimes be the best choice for some fights. There's just no getting around it. But at least now you have some options. While we're talking about Solar Titans, Bungie also brought some buffs to the Burning Maul super. The spin melee attack had its damage increased from 65 to 80 per hit. This helps make the light attack a more viable option for sustained damage on bosses and ultras. They've also buffed the heavy attack's detonation radius from 5 to 6 meters. This means your slam might catch a few more targets to help with the ad clearing when you need it. The last note here is that Bungie says they've improved the slam's projectile tracking. These two changes working together should, and I say theoretically here, should help make this super more reliable in both PvE and PvP. The buff to the slam's tracking was especially needed. And while it's noticeably better now, I tried it out for a bit and I have to say that it's still very easy to miss with this attack in certain ranges. Bad guys at about the 10-yard range who are strafing can still dodge this attack without much effort. For my hot take on these changes, they just weren't enough to make Burning Maul a competitive choice. The very foundation of this super itself needs a big rework. I can see it being used much more often if it felt as versatile as the Arcstrider's combination attacks. That would help it feel more like a powerful combo machine of fiery death, you know? I want the super to be a close-range powerhouse, like the Ifrit gauntlets from Devil May Cry, if any of you remember those weapons from the first game in the series. I'm just spitballing ideas here, but what if you could execute an attack combo like that of the Arcstrider Hunter? But you could also hold on to your light attack and charge it up for a more powerful hit for each attack in the series. That would offer a nice risk versus reward element to the super. And that's just a thought I had. Moving on to the Sentinel Titan, Bungie has buffed your super attack damage, but applied that bonus damage to the final melee attack in that 2-hit combo. It's up to 390 damage per hit from its original 300. They've also buffed the super's damage in general and PvE by 17%. That's not too much of a change. It should encourage you to be more mindful of making sure that your attack combos are used against more powerful enemies. This will be something that you can fit into your attack patterns with the bottom tree and the Voidfang pauldrons on to keep mixing it up in boss DPS situations while also hurling those frisbees of death. Now to talk about my favorite, and I mean absolute favorite part of this new Sandbox update. The amazing buffs to both the original Striker Titan subclass trees. There's a lot to go over. I'll start with the top tree's redesigned damage and its improved terminal velocity perk. Bungie brought the Fist of Havoc's heavy slam attack damage down from 325 to a current 275. Now while that sounds bad by itself, you gotta take it in context, right? They readjusted the rest of the super's damage so it won't feel nerfed. The super's damage to base, elite, and mini-boss enemies was buffed by 7%. On top of that, your damage against bosses was improved by 23%, and the impact against vehicles was generously is an understatement here, buffed by 60%. It's weird to me that they specifically focused on bringing that damage against vehicles up by such a high value, but I guess they had their reasons. With that out of the way, let's talk about the big change to the terminal velocity perk. This perk was originally designed to add a damage over time effect to targets you hit with your slam attack if you used it while in the air. Bungie changed this by adding a third tier to this perk, rewarding you for being able to masterfully use your heavy attack against opponents from above. The first tier of the perk will hit the target for 4 ticks of arc damage over a period of a few seconds. The second tier bumps it up to 8, and the third and final tier rewards you with 12 hits. Lastly, real quick, Bungie also increased the damage for each hit of terminal velocity from 100 to 112. So, why are these changes so important for Striker Titans? Well, I'm glad you asked. How smart of you. They offer the subclass some utility in dealing boss damage in solo and less challenging PvE content. It might sound unnecessary to buff the only Striker subclass people were using besides Go to the Missile, but take a moment to stop and remember. The only reason people were using this subclass over the bottom tree Striker was for the built-in double grenades and consistent shoulder charges when you paired it with the insurmountable Skullfort exotic helmet. Compared to the lackluster perks in the other Striker tree, going top tree was basically making the best of a bland situation. After the patch, you can be confident in choosing this version of Striker Titan and feel like you're bringing something to the table for Nightfall Strikes and other similar playlists. Now for the changes that have me rubbing my palms together like an evil villain. These are the things that have me most excited to play my bottom tree Striker Titan. The Fist of Havoc shoulder charge has had its energy cost reduced by 83%, combined with a buff to the trample perk, which can now return energy to your super every half a second. You can stay in your super for a very long time. You can see video on screen now of what I'm talking about. If there are enemies nearby for you to hit with your light attack, then you're basically the Energizer Bunny. This buff to the trample perk also has a very interesting effect for PvP Striker Titans wanting to run something besides shoulder charge or Go to the Missile. If you're paying attention to the kill feed and have a good situational awareness about spawn locations, then you can become a real problem for the enemy team with your extended super. This could also mean that you'll see players in competitive using this subclass, since rooming supers are so powerful in that game mode. I know this change isn't anything revolutionary, but it's just honestly one of my favorite things about this patch, you know? Using my super to just mindlessly clear entire segments of strikes and entire lost sectors is just too much fun to pass up. It may not be the most competitive subclass for the raid, but I don't think I'll ever go for anything else now that I have this. With all of these buffs to super damage, I feel it's worth mentioning that the exotic Synthoceps armor piece can be especially powerful for all these improved supers. The Biotic Enhancements perk from this exotic improves your melee and super damage, which can really come in clutch in multiple scenarios. You'll need to have at least 3 enemies near you to count as surrounded and proc this buff, so you'll need to plan ahead with your fire team to pull this off. As a Sunbreaker, you can use your super and start throwing hammers at the boss while ignoring the adds around you. Another good example would be how much damage the buff Sentinel super could do against bosses who spawn with a ton of adds, like the Taken Primeval bosses in Gambit. You might be tempted to keep your Voidfang pauldrons on all the time, but if boss DPS is your priority, then consider trying this build out instead. Lastly, the new Striker Titan is practically begging to be paired with the Synthoceps, as you'll constantly be running into packs of enemies to trample them. Well, that's all for today's video. As I mentioned, I've been working on trying to sound a little bit more lively in these videos, and I want to say thank you for all your continued feedback. I also want to thank you for watching today's video. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are about these recent changes to Titan subclasses. Were they enough to get you interested in trying out the other perk trees? Leave a comment below and let us know what you think about it. Be sure to hit the like button if you liked today's video, and be sure to subscribe to Planet Destiny for more Destiny 2 content. That's all from me. I'll see you next time.